Sound of a sputtering alien engine, followed by a sharp whack of a wrench, and then smooth, quiet operation. Edward Ramirez wiped grease from his hands with a rag that had seen more battles than a starship captain. "Your diagnostics overthink," he grunted, spinning the wrench. 9 times out of 10, it's just a loose coupling. "Vibration makes your fancy sensors think the whole system's failing." He gestured to a faded Daytona 500 poster on the wall. "Back on Earth, we had a saying. If you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough duct tape." The Vertal customer's photosynthetic skin, previously a worried orange, now pulsed confused yellow. "But you didn't use any adhesive strips." Edward just shrugged. "It's a metaphor. That'll be 40 credits." After the Vertal left, Edward returned to rebuilding a combustion engine nobody on Verdania Prime would ever need. The familiar work kept his mind from drifting to things like how he'd ended up 40 light years from Earth, fixing alien appliances instead of managing a NASCAR pit crew, or how Travis would still be alive if Edward had caught that loose lug nut. A soft scraping sound from outside pulled him from his thoughts. Probably just the local kids. But then he saw it. A droplet of purple liquid on his workshop floor, still wet, leading toward the back alley. Then another and another. His racing instincts kicked in. Someone was hurt, losing fluid fast. In racing, you had seconds to prevent disaster. He found her wedged between rusted metal sheets and old hoverbike frames. A Zephyrian child, maybe 6 years old, her purple skin pale and clammy. Her right leg ended in a mess of makeshift bandages just below the knee, purple blood seeping through what looked like expensive fabric. A broken crutch, a rusted pipe wrapped in rags lay beside her. "Holy hell!" Edward dropped to his knees. The kid's eyes snapped open, violet irises with silver flecks wide with terror. "Hey, easy," he kept his voice low. "I'm not going to hurt you. Name's Eddie, I fix things." He pointed to his shop's back door. "Got a first aid kit inside? Maybe some juice boxes if you're into that ancient Earth technology." The girl tried to scramble backward, gasping at the pain. Her hand clutched something under her torn cloak. A metallic gleam caught the light. Okay, you don't have to move." Edward held up both hands. "But that leg needs attention. I can call a medical transport." She shook her head violently. "No doctors." "Yeah, I get that. Doctors ask questions." Edward studied her face. Despite the dirt and tear tracks, her features had that distinctive Zephyrian symmetry, almost too perfect to be real. "How about this? I carry you inside. Clean that up myself. No questions, no authorities. Deal?" She stared for a long moment, then almost imperceptibly she nodded. Edward scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing, her bones hollow like all Zephyrians. As he carried her, she tucked her face against his shoulder, trembling. He set her on his workbench. "Medical kits in the bathroom. This might sting a bit. You know what else stings? Bees! But they make honey, so we forgive them." A corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. He worked in silence, cutting away blood-soaked bandages. The wound was old, but freshly torn open. The crudeness of the amputation made his stomach turn. This wasn't surgical. "You've been walking on this?" He applied antiseptic foam. She bit her lip, but didn't cry out. "That's either brave or stupid." "Maybe both." He noticed the quality of her torn cloak, the shimmer of expensive fabric. Her hands, soft and uncalloused. The way she held herself, spine straight despite the pain, like someone had drilled posture into her since birth. There. He secured the last of the fresh bandages. "That'll hold for now, but you need proper medical attention. That crutch of yours is garbage. No wonder you fell." He rummaged through his scrap pile. "Give me 20 minutes. I'll make you something better." The girl watched him work, her eyes tracking every movement as he welded aluminum pipes, added foam padding, adjusted the height until it was perfect. When he handed it to her, she ran her fingers over it like it was made of gold. "Thank you," she whispered. Edward nearly dropped his welding torch. That wasn't street dialect. That was pure Hyperion, the kind spoken in the floating palaces of the upper tier. "You're welcome," he said carefully. "You got somewhere to go?" She nodded, sliding off the workbench. The new crutch took her weight easily. She limped toward the door, then paused, looking back at him with those striking violet eyes. Then she was gone. Edward stared at the purple bloodstains on his workbench. He'd seen a lot of injured kids in the lower district, but none with that bearing, that accent. He checked his old security footage. There she was, 3 months ago, watching him from behind crates, miming his movements, sometimes falling with her makeshift crutch. 3 months, Edward muttered. This kid. The next day, Edward kept the shop door open. He pretended not to notice the movement behind the recycling unit, but left a sandwich and a juice box on a crate. 20 minutes later, both were gone. This continued for 3 days. On the 4th, he decided to be more direct. You know, he said loudly, adjusting a manifold, this would be easier if you just came inside. The view's better, and I've got chairs that actually have cushions. Slowly, she emerged. I don't want to bother you. Kid, I talk to myself half the day. Company would be an improvement. He gestured to a stool. Besides, you've been studying my technique for months. Might as well get a closer look. She hesitated, then made her way to the stool. So, he said, returning to his work, you going to tell me your name, or should I just call you Purple Shadow? You can call me Leah, not her real name. Okay, Leah, why have you been watching me? After a long silence. You fix broken things, but you don't just replace them. You make them work differently. She gestured at his wall of repaired items. That heating unit? Corfax design, but you've added human components. It works better now. You can tell that just by looking? She nodded. I understand machines. I used to study engineering. She cut herself off, her hand moving unconsciously to where her leg ended. But I can't anymore. Broken things shouldn't touch tools of creation. Edward set down his wrench. Who told you that crap? She flinched. It's the law. The imperfect cannot create, only destroy. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Edward pulled up another stool. He'd been cleaning her cloak earlier, and a medallion had fallen from an inner pocket. He'd shoved it back, pretending not to see it, but he had. The royal seal of House Vidian. Leah, he said carefully. What's your real name? She went very still. Does it matter? Not to me, but somebody's probably looking for you. Her laugh was bitter. No, nobody looks for broken things. His shop's proximity alarm chimed. 3 sleek hover vehicles had just entered the district's airspace. The kind that never came to the lower tier unless something was seriously wrong. Leah went rigid. I should go! Back door, Edward said quickly. Service tunnels 50 meters south. Go! But it was too late. The shop's front door opened and a woman entered who made the air itself seem to stand at attention. Purple skin a shade deeper than the girl's. Silver hair that moved like liquid mercury. 2 guards flanked her. The woman's eyes, exact copies of Leah's, found the child immediately. Oilia, she said quietly. It's time to come home. The girl, Oilia apparently, stood from the stool, chin raised despite the tears. I'm not your daughter anymore, remember? You said so yourself. The dead have no children. Edward looked between them. Mother and daughter? The resemblance was too strong. I came to bring you back, the woman said. Her voice never wavered, but Edward caught a flash of pain in her eyes. To lock me in the recovery wing again? To pretend I don't exist until after the ceremony? Oilia's knuckles were white on her crutch. I'd rather stay here with a human mechanic in this... The woman's gaze swept the shop. Establishment. Hey! Edward interjected. This establishment has working heat and all the juice boxes a kid could want. Plus, I don't tell her she's broken. The woman's attention snapped to him. You don't know what you're interfering with. I know a kid who needs help when I see one. Edward stepped partially in front of Oilia. And I know something about losing parts of yourself. Difference is, I learned you can build something new with what's left. Touching but irrelevant. The woman straightened. Zephyrian law is clear. The imperfect cannot rule. In 2 weeks, the ceremony of inheritance will name a new heir. Oilia will be cared for, given comfort. But she cannot be what she was meant to be because she's missing a leg. That's insane. That's our way. The woman's voice cracked slightly. Oilia, please come home. Why? Oilia asked. You haven't looked at me in a year. Haven't touched me since. She gestured at her leg. Since this happened. I'm already dead to you. The woman flinched. That's not... I can't... She stopped, took a breath. The law. Screw your law, Edward said. No offense, Your Majesty, or whatever, but any law that throws away a kid because she's not physically perfect is garbage. The woman's eyes narrowed. You know who I am? Lucky guess. The whole royal bearing, perfect bone structure, guards that look like they could bench press my shop kind of gives it away. He gestured at Oilia. Plus, she's got your eyes. Then you know interfering with royal affairs is punishable by death. Probably. Everything's punishable by death with you people, Edward shrugged. Look, Your Majesty, Kalira, she said unexpectedly. My name is Kalira. Okay, Callie, your daughter's been coming here for 3 months. 3 months of crawling through service tunnels, falling, getting back up just to watch me fix things. You know why? Kalira said nothing. Because I treat her like a person, not a tragedy. Because when she's here, she can just be a kid who likes machines. Edward picked up a wrench, spinning it absently. You say she can't be what she was meant to be, but maybe she's becoming something else, something better. Better? She was to be queen, to lead our people into a new age. Now she can barely walk, because you gave up on her. The words exploded out of Edward. She's got a crap crutch and old bandages because nobody thought she was worth proper medical care anymore. Our physicians tried everything. Your physicians think like Zephyrians. Edward set down the wrench, an idea forming. Look, you've got 2 weeks until this ceremony, right? Give me 1 week. Let me try something. Try what? A prosthetic. A real one. Not whatever medieval stuff your doctors probably attempted. Kalira's laugh was bitter. Our technology is centuries ahead of Earth's? Sure, but humans? We've been replacing parts of ourselves since we figured out how to sharpen sticks. We know prosthetics. We know adaptation. He looked at Oilia. I can build her something that'll let her walk, maybe even run. Impossible. The neural connections are different for Zephyrians. Yeah, but not incompatible. I've been studying your tech for 2 years, fixing it, modifying it. Edward moved to his workbench, pulling out sketches he'd made while repairing various alien devices. Your bioelectric fields are actually more conductive than human nervous systems. If anything, a prosthetic would work better for her than for us. Kalira stared at the sketches. You've thought about this. Started the night I met her. Couldn't help it. It's how my brain works. See a problem. Find a solution. And if you fail? Edward looked at Oilia, who was watching him with those violet eyes, full of something he hadn't seen before. Hope. Then at least someone tried. Kalira stared at him for a long moment, something shifting in those violet eyes. Then she turned to her daughter. 1 week. If this human fails, you return to the palace. No arguments. And if he succeeds? Oilia asked, her voice small but steady. Then we'll see what the council makes of a mechanical leg. Kalira's tone suggested she already knew what they'd make of it. Nothing good. She moved toward the door, then paused. I'll send proper medical supplies. She hesitated. And I'll return tomorrow to observe. After she left, Edward found Oilia crying silently on the stool, tears fizzing against her purple skin. Hey, none of that. He handed her a relatively clean rag. We've got work to do. First rule of human engineering. When in doubt, raid everything. The next morning, Edward had Oilia manning the shop's door while he dismantled a pizza delivery drone. Its gyroscopic stabilizer was still intact, perfect for balance control. Why pizza? Oilia asked, sorting screws by size with surprising dexterity. Because humans will find a way to deliver pizza anywhere. Mars colony, pizza in 30 minutes. Bottom of the ocean, pizza in a submarine. It's basically our greatest achievement as a species. He extracted the stabilizer. See this? It'll help you compensate for uneven terrain. Your planet's gravity is about 80% of Earth's, so we need to account for that. You've thought about this a lot. Couldn't sleep last night. My brain does that. Gets a problem and won't let go. He set the gyroscope aside and moved to an old gaming chair. This has haptic feedback sensors. They'll translate pressure into signals your brain can interpret. Oilia watched him work, then quietly asked, Do you think I'm broken? Edward's hand stilled. He set down his tools and crouched to her eye level. You want the truth. You're missing a leg. That's not broken. That's just different. Broken would be giving up. Broken would be accepting what everyone tells you about yourself. He tapped her forehead gently. Everything that makes you you is still in there. We're just building you better wheels." She managed a wobbly smile. "That's a terrible metaphor. I'm a mechanic, not a poet." The workshop door chimed. Kalira entered, this time alone, wearing plain clothes that still managed to look regal. She carried a medical case that probably cost more than Edward's annual income. "You came back," Oilia said, surprise evident. "I said I would observe." Kalira set down the case. "I brought neural interface patches. Our technology, but you might find them useful." Edward opened the case, whistling low. "This is military-grade stuff. How'd you—" "Never mind. Queen, right?" He held up a translucent patch. "These could work if we modify the connection points." He started sketching. Kalira moved closer to see, close enough that he caught her scent, something like ozone and wildflowers. "Your electromagnetic fields," he said, forcing himself to focus. "They're generated by cellular alignment, right? What if instead of trying to match that perfectly, we create a complementary field? Like harmony instead of unison?" Kalira's eyes widened slightly. "That's actually brilliant. Our physicians always tried to replicate exactly, but harmonics could work better." "Mom knows everything about biofields," Oilia piped up. "She wrote the definitive text when she was younger." Kalira's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago." "Not that long," Edward said, glancing at her. "What are you, 35? 38? She seemed surprised he'd answered. "So you were what, 20 when you wrote a definitive scientific text? That's impressive." "I was motivated." Her hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen. "I wanted to understand why some pregnancies failed. The biofield disruptions during gestation." Edward caught the gesture, filed it away. "Did you figure it out?" "Eventually." "Too late for—" She cut herself off, her gaze flickering to Oilia. "It doesn't matter now." The pieces clicked in Edward's mind. Miscarriages, maybe multiple ones before Oilia. It explained the fierce protectiveness, the devastating distance when her only successful child was maimed. They worked in relative silence for 2 hours, Edward shaping metal while Kalira provided calculations for field harmonics. Oilia helped where she could, fetching tools, organizing components. It felt almost domestic. "You're teaching her to use tools," Kalira observed, watching Oilia operate a small welding torch under Edward's supervision. "She's got good hands, steady. Plus, she already knows the theory better than most engineers I've met." "Our law forbids." "Your law is stupid." Edward didn't look up. "No offense, you say that a lot." "No offense before saying something offensive. Would you prefer I lie?" "I'd prefer you show proper respect. Respect is earned, not inherited." He did look up then, meeting her gaze. "You want me to bow and scrape because you've got a title, or you want me to build your daughter a leg that actually works?" They stared at each other, the air between them crackling. "Mom," Oilia said carefully, "maybe you could help with the neural mapping? You know my patterns better than anyone." It was a peace offering and smart. Kalira's expression softened marginally. Yes, I could do that." The next 3 days fell into a routine. Edward and Oilia would start early, building the prosthetics frame. Kalira would arrive mid-morning, always with some excuse, bringing supplies, checking progress. She'd stay later each day. On the 4th day, she arrived to find Edward and Oilia covered in oil, both laughing hysterically. "What happened?" she demanded. "Eddie tried to demonstrate how the knee joint works." Oilia gasped between giggles. "But he used too much hydraulic fluid and—" She dissolved into laughter again. "It's not that funny." Edward protested, wiping oil from his face, which only smeared it worse. "You look like you wrestled a tar pit," Oilia managed. Kalira's lips twitched. Then, to Edward's amazement, she actually laughed. Not a polite royal chuckle, but a real laugh that transformed her face. "You have oil in your hair," she told Edward. "It's sticking up." He ran a hand through his hair, making it worse. "Great! Now I look like I stuck my finger in a socket." "I don't know what that means, but yes, probably." They cleaned up and the atmosphere had shifted. Lighter somehow. As they returned to work, Kalira began talking more freely. "The biofields aren't just for telekinesis," she explained, helping Edward calibrate sensors. "They're how we sense the world. Oilia hasn't been able to feel properly since—" Since I lost my leg, Oilia finished quietly. It's okay, Mom. You can say it. Kalira's hand trembled slightly. Since the amputation, it's like losing one of your senses. We'll fix that, Edward said with more confidence than he felt. The haptic feedback should help. And look, he showed them his latest modification. I've added electromagnetic pulse generators at key points. They'll create a field that meshes with your natural one. Like a harmony, Oilia said, understanding immediately. Exactly. You're going to be like a cyborg princess. How cool is that? What's a cyborg? Half machine, half person, all awesome. Kalira shook her head but smiled slightly. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Like a disease, but more fun. That night, Kalira stayed late. Oilia had fallen asleep on the shop's battered couch, exhausted. Edward covered her with his jacket, then returned to fine-tuning the prosthetic's knee joint. She hasn't slept that peacefully in a year, Kalira said softly, watching her daughter. Kids are resilient. Give them hope and they'll run with it. And if this doesn't work, if I've given her hope for nothing, Edward looked up. Then at least she had a week of feeling like she mattered. Kalira was quiet for a moment. My father would have liked you. Yeah? He appreciated directness and terrible jokes? She moved closer, ostensibly to observe his work. He died 3 years ago. Border skirmish with House Crimson that escalated into war. He was trying to negotiate peace. They shot him during the talks. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white. The same faction that would later target Oilia. They knew she was all I had left. Edward set down his tools. My racing partner, Travis. Friends since we were kids. I was crew chief. He was driver. Best team in NASCAR's amateur league. He picked up the welding torch, turning it in his hands. I missed a loose lug nut during inspection. Wheel came off at 180 MEPR. It wasn't your fault, was it? It was my job to check. My responsibility. He met her eyes. Sometimes I think I came out here to get as far from racing as possible. Ended up on an alien planet fixing hover scooters. Travis would have laughed his ass off. Is that why you're helping Oilia? Guilt? Maybe at first, now. He glanced at the sleeping girl. Now she's just my kid. Is that weird? Yes. Kalira's expression was unreadable. But I understand it. Their hands were close on the workbench. Edward was acutely aware of every inch between them. Kalira seemed to realize it too, pulling back slightly. I should go, she said. You could stay. Order some food. Let Oilia sleep a bit longer before moving her. She hesitated, then nodded. All right. They ate terrible takeout from the one human restaurant in the district, talking about anything except the prosthetic or the upcoming ceremony. Edward learned Kalira had wanted to be an engineer before royal duties consumed her life. Kalira learned Edward could play guitar badly and sing worse. You're not what I expected, she admitted. What did you expect? Someone less. Humans have a reputation for being crude, simplistic. We are, but we're also stubborn as hell and creatively stupid. He grinned. It's a winning combination. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Modesty isn't a human trait, I see. Nope. We're terrible at it. Oilia stirred on the couch. Kalira moved to her, then stopped, her hand hovering inches from her daughter's head. It's okay, Edward said quietly. She won't break. Kalira's hand trembled as she touched Oilia's hair, stroking it gently. Oilia's eyes opened. Mom? I'm here, little star. The endearment seemed to surprise them both. Are you staying? We should return to the palace. Could we come back tomorrow? Kaylee looked at Edward, who shrugged. Shop's open if you want it. Please, Mom. All right, tomorrow. After they left, Edward stood in his empty shop. For the first time in 3 years, the space didn't feel quite so lonely. The 5th day brought the first real test. The prosthetic was complete, sleek purple metal that matched Oilia's skin tone with subtle silver accents. Edward had spent all night ensuring every connection was perfect. Ready? He asked. Oilia, jaw set, nodded. Kalira stood close, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. Edward activated the neural interface. Oilia gasped as sensation flooded through the prosthetic. Not pain, but awareness. The electromagnetic field generators hummed to life, syncing with her natural biorhythm. How does it feel? Edward asked. Like fizzy water in my bones. tingly but not bad. Can you move the toes? The prosthetic's foot flexed. Oilia's eyes went wide. I can feel the floor. Not like before, but I can feel it. Good, that's the haptic feedback. Now let's try standing. She stood slowly, Edward on one side, Kalira on the other. The prosthetic held her weight easily. She took a tentative step, then another. Then her confidence crumbled. The moment she remembered she was broken, her biofield fluctuated. The prosthetic's harmonics went out of sync and she stumbled. Edward caught her. I can't, she sobbed. I'm not whole anymore. Hey. Edward knelt beside her. Remember what I taught you? Fail faster. You fell. So what? Fall again. Fall 100 times. Each time you learn something. But no buts. You know what my first crew chief told me? If you're not crashing, you're not pushing hard enough. He helped her stand again. Push harder. Kalira moved to Oilia's other side. For the first time in a year, she pulled her daughter into a full embrace. You are my daughter, my brilliant, brave, stubborn daughter. Whole or not, you are mine. Oilia clung to her, tears fizzing against Kalira's shoulder. When she finally pulled back, her expression had changed. Determined now, not defeated. Again, she said. This time, her biofield remained steady. 1 step, 2, 3. By the 10th step, she was walking almost normally. By the 20th, she was practically bouncing. Eddie, it works. Mom, look! She threw herself at them, hugging both simultaneously. In the celebration, caught in the moment of pure joy, Kalira turned to Edward. Their eyes met, both grinning like idiots, and she kissed him. It lasted maybe 2 seconds before they both realized what was happening and jerked apart. Edward's brain seemed to have short-circuited. Kalira's purple skin had darkened to almost indigo. Oilia looked between them with 6-year-old wisdom. Does this mean Eddie can stay? Before either adult could answer, the shop's window exploded. Glass shards scattered across the workshop floor like deadly stars. A metal cylinder rolled through the broken window, hissing as it released thick smoke. Get down! Edward shoved both Kalira and Oilia behind the workbench as another window shattered. The smoke burned his eyes, some kind of Zephyrian crowd control gas that made his lungs seize. Through the haze, he saw figures in dark suits. House Crimson. They moved with military precision, surrounding the shop. House Crimson, Kalira hissed, pulling Oilia closer. They found us. Edward grabbed a wrench, useless against energy weapons, but he needed something. Back door, move! But the back door exploded inward. More suited figures poured in. Edward stepped forward, ready to fight when Kalira did something he didn't expect. She stood up, her biofield suddenly visible as a shimmer in the air. I am Queen Kalira of House Vidian, she announced, her voice carrying despite the chaos. This is a violation of the Treaty of Houses. Stand down immediately! One figure stepped forward, removing his helmet. Lord Cale Vesper of House Crimson. Edward recognized him. Older Zephyrian, scarred face, eyes like chips of ice. Your Majesty, Vesper said with mock courtesy. We receive reports of dangerous human technology being developed here, merely investigating for public safety by destroying private property and deploying chemical weapons. Unfortunate necessity. Vesper's gaze found Oilia, who stood on her new leg, chin raised despite her fear. Interesting device. Surely the Council should examine whether such modifications are legal for a potential heir. The Council has no say until the ceremony, Kalira replied. Perhaps, but accidents happen, especially with untested human technology. Vesper nodded to his soldiers. Confiscate the device. Like hell, Edward growled, stepping in front of Oilia. Vesper smiled coldly. The human speaks. How novel. He gestured, and 2 soldiers raised their weapons. Stand aside, mechanic. No, Eddie, Kalira warned. No, Edward repeated. You want the leg? You go through me. Acceptable terms. The energy blast hit Edward in the chest, throwing him backward. Tools crashed around him. Pain exploded through his ribs. Stunner setting. Not lethal, but it hurt like hell. Eddie! Oilia tried to run to him, but a soldier grabbed her arm. Don't touch her! Kalira's biofield flared brighter. Several soldiers stepped back. A queen's power wasn't something to test lightly. Careful, Your Majesty, Vesper said smoothly. Violence between houses during succession periods carries severe penalties. You wouldn't want to lose your throne over a human and a broken child. Edward forced himself up, tasting blood. She's not broken, you piece of... Another stun blast dropped him to his knees. Stop! Oilia's cry pierced the air. Her own biofield suddenly erupted. Wild, uncontrolled, but powerful. The prosthetic's electromagnetic amplifiers kicked in, harmonizing with her emotional spike. Every metal tool in the shop began to vibrate. Impossible, Vesper breathed. She shouldn't be able to... The metal cylinder he'd thrown earlier shot across the room, striking him in the head. He stumbled, and chaos erupted. Oilia's telekinesis, amplified by the prosthetic, sent tools flying like missiles. Soldiers ducked for cover. In the confusion, Edward crawled to his workbench, his fingers finding the emergency beacon he'd installed after his first break-in. He slammed it, sending an alert to local security forces. "Weapons down!" a new voice commanded. Human security forces poured in. The lower district's police, mostly human and Vertal officers who didn't care about Zephyrian politics. "This is house business," Vesper snarled. "This is my jurisdiction," the human captain replied flatly. "And you just assaulted a human citizen and destroyed private property. Your house status doesn't mean squat down here." Vesper looked ready to argue, then seemed to realize the optics. A noble house attacking a child and a human mechanic. The media would crucify him. "This isn't over," he told Kalira. "The council will hear about this abomination." He gestured to the prosthetic. "No machine can make the imperfect whole." After they left, Edward finally managed to stand, one hand pressed to his ribs. Kalira was beside him immediately, her cool hands checking his injuries with surprising gentleness. "2 cracked ribs," she diagnosed. "Minor burns. You're lucky." "Feel super lucky," Edward wheezed. Oilia hugged him carefully from his other side. "You protected me." "Of course I did. That's what family does." The word hung in the air. Family. Kalira's hands stilled on his ribs. "We're not," she began. "Aren't we?" Edward looked between them. "Maybe not by blood or law, but..." "Mom," Oilia said quietly, "I want to stay here tonight with Eddie." "That's not appropriate. Please, I don't want to go back to the palace. Not yet." Kalira looked at her daughter, then at Edward's damaged shop, then at the man himself, bruised, bleeding, but still standing. "I'll stay too," she decided. "For security purposes?" Edward raised an eyebrow. "Security purposes? Shut up and find me bandages for your ribs." They spent the night cleaning glass and fixing what they could. Oilia fell asleep on the couch again, her prosthetic still attached. Kalira and Edward sat on the floor, backs against the workbench, sharing a bottle of earth whiskey. "Vesper won't stop," Kalira said quietly. "If Oilia passes the ceremony with the prosthetic, his daughter loses her chance at the throne. Then we make sure she passes." "It's not that simple. The council could declare the prosthetic invalid. Say it's not truly part of her." Edward took a swig of whiskey, wincing. "Then we make it undeniable. Tomorrow, we..."